Good morning. I'm going to talk today about food and phobias and faith. First, food. I'm a food lover. I've rarely come across a food I didn't like. There have been a few, mostly when I was experimenting. I tried roasted grasshoppers once in a rural town in Mexico. They weren't bad, but I didn't finish the plate. I once tried rattlesnake, and it was pretty good. I also tried groundhog, and I won't make that mistake again. I don't recommend it. And there are a few things that people eat in different parts of the world that aren't ever going to be on my list. Sea slugs and fried maggots, for starters. I grew up eating what was put in front of me, and it was mostly pretty humdrum. My mom didn't like cooking, but I married a lovely woman for whom cooking is a passion and a form of art. I didn't realize before I married Anne that really good cooks think in terms of taste and smell and texture and color and how to arrange those things into a kind of symphony for the taste buds. So I've had a lifetime of enjoyment of eating in different parts of the world, different cuisines, sitting across the table and talking with all kinds of amazing and wonderful people. That's food. Now, phobias. About 10 years ago, a friend of mine that I used to work with at Houghton Mifflin Company was telling me about her cousin. His name was Michael. At that time, Michael was in his 50s, and he had never eaten solid food in his life. He survived on baby food. He bought it by the case. When he was a baby, it seemed that Michael had made the switch from pure milk to those little bottles of mashed vegetables and chicken that you get in the little Gerber bottle. But he never got any further. He refused to eat that first spoonful of rice or mashed potatoes or whatever it was that his mother gave him to make the switch from baby food to the beginning of eating real solid food. He would never accept solid food, no matter how carefully it was prepared. So for 50 years, he continued to survive on baby food. And that had shaped his whole life. As a teen, when others were going out to parties or on dates, he stayed home because he didn't want others to find out how he ate. In his 20s and 30s, his teeth gradually loosened and all fell out because he didn't give them any work to do. And he lived alone. He basically had no social life. He made his living driving a taxi, and even that was hard because in his toothless condition, it was really hard for him to talk to his customers. I never heard any more about Michael, so I don't know how he's doing. I have learned that he's not alone, that there are other people in the world who have what's called food neophobia, which is the fear of new or unfamiliar foods. Neophobia, fear of what's new. But it makes me sad to think of someone's life being so restricted, so damaged, so narrow, all because at one point early in his life, he was afraid to try that first spoonful of rice or mashed potatoes or whatever it was. I think of all the adventure, the joy, the color, the variety that Michael has missed. He's never even had a Big Mac or a whoopie pie or a piece of candy, not to mention pizza or Thanksgiving turkey or a big juicy steak. So what does this have to do with being here in chapel at Brooks School? It has to do with faith. It has to do with having faith to take the risk to eat that first spoonful of rice, to take the risk of becoming fully who we are, to becoming fully the people we're called to be. Both of our readings this morning talk about the fundamental choice we're all confronted with in this life, the choice of saying the great yes or the great no. The Greek poet Kavafis lived most of his life in Alexandria in Egypt. Very few of his poems were published during his lifetime. He mostly just shared them with his friends. After his death in 1933, people gradually began to recognize how important his work was. He's now known and admired around the world. In today's poem, he says, "For some people, the day comes when they have to declare the great yes or the great no. It's clear at once who has the yes ready within him, and saying it, he goes from honor to honor, strong in his conviction. He who refuses does not repent. Asked again, he'll still say no, yet that no drags him down all his life. Kavafis doesn't put this in religious language, but what he's talking about is the core of religious faith, the decision to say yes to this life that we've been given, to accept it with our whole hearts, to opt in, as Mr. Packard would say, to opt in all the way, without hesitation, leaving behind our doubts and fears and uncertainties, and accepting everything that life has to offer to us, its joys, its wonders, sometimes its pains and sorrows, but accepting it for the wonderful, astonishing, amazing free gift that it is. It's making the decision to go ahead and eat that spoonful of rice or mashed potatoes, even if it tastes a little unfamiliar. It's taking the chance that opens up the full wonderfulness of this world and the full wonderfulness of being alive in it. In the second reading from the Hebrew Scriptures, Moses is saying the same thing, but in totally different language. Moses has been leading the people of Israel through the desert for 40 years since their escape from slavery in Egypt. And they're about to enter into the land that's been promised to them, the land of milk and honey. And Moses says to the people, choose now today. Choose life. Choose the great yes, which is the Spirit of God. Commit yourselves to live with the Spirit of life as the focus of all you are and all you do. Do this, and your life will be rich and rewarding and filled with joy and wonder. So it's the same message from both Moses and Kavafis. Eat your spoonful of rice. Put your fears or doubts behind you. Don't let them stop you from opting in all the way to the life you've been given. Eat that first spoonful of rice, and it will lead to a lifelong banquet of riches. And that's the message of every religion, because religions are basically a collection of reminders from those who came before us and who learned this lesson for themselves, and all they want to do is pass it on to us. So it's the only message that matters. Choose life. Eat your spoonful of rice or mashed potatoes. Thank you for listening.